I've put together a specific plan that cuts $5 trillion over 5 years, that spends less money each year for the next 4 years that I'll be president of the United States. If you think defense spending is the problem, then you need a remedial math class to go back to. Defense spending will not be cut under my administration, but we will go after all of the means-tested entitlement programs, Medicaid, food stamps, all of those programs, and do what we did with welfare.
Well, I'm looking at a historic record, which voting for raising the debt ceiling 5 different times without voting for compensating cuts, a whole series of votes voting to fund Planned Parenthood, to expand the Department of Education during his term in the Senate. I'm going to go through every single program and ask if we can afford it. And if not, I'm going to say, is this program so critical that it's worth borrowing money from China to pay for it? And if not, I'm going to get rid of it.
You're never going to balance the budget on the back of a highly unemployed country. And so I would be committed, first of all, to a program of jobs and economic growth. Second, the energy issue is enormous. The leading developer of North Dakota Oil estimated recently that if we would open up federal land and open up offshore, you would have 16 to 18 trillion, not billion, trillion dollars in royalties to the federal government in the next generation. An enormous flow which would drive down prices to $2.50 a gallon.
Congressman Paul, you've questioned the fiscal conservative credentials of all these gentlemen, but particularly this week, Senator Santorum. You have a new television ad that labels him a fake. Why?
Because he's a fake.
I'm real, Ron. I'm real.
Congratulations.
I'm real. Thank you.
No, I find it really fascinating that when people are running for office, they're really fiscally conservative. When they're in office, they do something different.
He supported the folks on Wall Street and bailed out Wall Street, was all for it. And then when it came to the auto workers and the folks in Detroit, he said no. That to me is not a consistent, principled position. I had one. I believe in markets, not just when they're convenient for me.
Nice try, but now let's look at the facts. All right, first of all, let's go back in the auto industry and go back to 2000, I think it was 2008. President Bush was still in office. And the 3 chief executive officers of the 3 major auto companies got in their private planes and flew to Washington and said, please write us a check. I think they wanted $50 billion. And I wrote an op-ed in the paper, and I said, absolutely not. Don't write a check for $50 billion. These companies need to go through a managed bankruptcy, just like airlines have, just like other industries have.
Well, now that the bankruptcy or the bailing out of GM worked, I said that's sort of like if a criminal goes out and robs a bank and he's successful, therefore you endorse what he did because he's successful. But you have to rob people. You have to distort the law.
There is a legitimate question about the power of the government to impose on religion activities which any religion opposes. That's legitimate.
I don't think we've seen in the history of this country the kind of attack on religious conscience, religious freedom, religious tolerance that we've seen under Barack Obama. Most recently, of course, most recently requiring the Catholic Church to provide for its employees and its various enterprises health care, insurance that would include birth control, sterilization, and the morning after pill.
You told an evangelical blog, if elected, you will talk about what, quote, no president has talked about before, the dangers of contraception. Why?
The increasing number of children being born out of wedlock in America, teens who are sexually active. And what we're seeing is a problem in our culture with respect to children being raised by children.
It's the morality of society that we have to deal with. The pill is there and, you know, it contributes maybe, but the pills can't be blamed for the immorality of our society.
Governor, please.
When you have government as the central provider of services, you inevitably move towards tyranny because the government has the power of force.
A recent federal analysis says the cost of secure fencing, which they have in a good deal of the border along this state, would cost about $3 million per mile. Is that a good investment, money well spent?
Probably not, but we can do a better job, and the best way to do it is forget about the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan and deal with our border and put the resources on this border. This is what we need.
They passed a law here that says that people who come here and try and find work, that the employer is required to look them up on E-Verify. This E-Verify system allows employers in Arizona to know who's here legally and who's not here legally. And as a result of E-Verify being put in place, the number of people in Arizona that are here illegally has dropped by some 14%, where the national average has only gone down 7%.
I'm not going to require homeowners to do E-Verify. I think that's one step too far. But I think what we need to do is to give law enforcement the opportunity to do what they're doing here in Arizona, which is to allow folks to enforce the law here in this country, to allow people who are breaking the law or are suspicious of breaking the law to be able to be detained and deported if they're found here in this country illegally, as well as those who are trying to seek employment.
I do think that the key decisions that are being made by this administration, by President Obama, however, relating to our military, are seriously awry. This is a president who is shrinking our Navy, shrinking our Air Force, wants to shrink our active duty personnel by 50 to 100,000, is cutting our military budget by roughly $1 trillion. The world is more dangerous. It is not safer. North Korea is going through transition. The Arab Spring has become the Arab winter. Syria is in flux. And of course, Pakistan with 100 nuclear weapons or more represents a potential threat. I mean, we face a very dangerous world. The right course is to add ships to our Navy, to modernize and add aircraft to our Air Force, to add 100,000 troops to our active duty personnel.
All of us are more at risk today, men and women, boys and girls, than at any time in the history of this country. And we need to understand that's the context in which we're going to have to move forward in understanding the nature of modern combat. I think this is a very sober period, and I believe this is the most dangerous president on national security grounds in American history.
When they're going up against a dangerous, theocratic regime that wants to wipe out the state of Israel, that wants to dominate the radical Islamic world and take on the great Satan, the United States, we do nothing. That is a president that must go, and you want a leader who will take them on, I'll do that.
I don't want them to get a weapon, but I think what we're doing is encouraging them to have a weapon because they feel threatened. If you look at a map of Iran, we have 45 bases around their country plus our submarines. The Iranians can't possibly attack anybody.